Hi, good morning, everyone. We will talk now about the healthcare startup journey. I'm Olivier COUPIER. I'm the entrepreneurship director at Eurasanté. We are the public development agency in healthcare in northern France. We have been founded like 25 years ago by the Lille University Hospital. Also we are part of the deep tech incubator community. We are funded by the French Ministry of Research. We have supported more than 300 startups and entrepreneurs the last 20 years. And I'm really happy to be with such a great panel today to discuss about what makes healthcare so specific. We all know that healthcare is a specific sector. It takes some time with all the clinics and all of that. I'm happy to have with me, first of all, Hubert Chaperon, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Owkin. Hubert, can you tell us a little bit more of who you are and what is Owkin? Because probably you know Owkin by name, but maybe you can give us a little bit more insights.
Sure. Thank you, Olivier. Hi, everyone, and thank you, Hello Tomorrow, for hosting us all today. My name is Hubert Chaperon. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Owkin. I originally come from the synthetic biology industry. I spent the first 10 years of my career in the San Francisco Bay Area, trying to develop and commercialize products from biology using fermentation. Initially biofuels and cosmetic ingredients, industrial chemicals, so on and so forth. And 3 years ago, I came back to France to join the revolution of applying AI to healthcare. I joined Owkin 3 years ago, and for those of you who don't know Owkin, we're a French-American AI biotech company. And what AI biotech means is first acknowledging that the common model for developing drugs is broken. As you all know, it costs above $1 billion, takes over 10 years to develop a drug, and that one-size-fits-all model of one drug for one disease doesn't work anymore. And so the AI biotech model, at least Owkin's model, is to say we actually have to break up the disease and understand all the subtypes so that we can develop the right treatment for the right patient. So to do that, our belief and we're convinced that it's by developing a data platform, because it all starts with the patient's data, multimodal patient data, meaning that we will leverage clinical data, genomic data, images, as well as spatial transcriptomics and other of these specialty modalities to understand the complexity and the heterogeneity of disease, particularly in cancer. And so to do that, we spend a lot of energy and resources in building that network of leading academic centers where the patient data is hosted. And so when one center isn't enough to answer a key scientific question, we've also developed a technology called federated learning, by which we can virtually aggregate all of this data from our network of 40+ academic centers, so that we can train powerful deep learning algorithms that it's the algorithm that travels and not the data. It stays behind the hospital's firewall in the hospital, and so our models are trained in a privacy-preserving way. So when you have enough of this critical mass of high-quality multimodal patient data, this is when you can develop powerful deep learning algorithms to answer the scientific questions. And so the scientific question very often is, why do two patients respond differently to the same treatment? And so we do that. We were trying to do two things as a biotech. The first one is finding treatments. And to do that, we build interpretability features in AI algorithms so that we can combine it with the best of human intelligence and all the researchers in our academic network to derive hypotheses for novel therapeutic targets. And the second one is, as you're therefore getting into precision medicine, is that when these patients come through in the clinic, you have to be able to identify them, what patient subgroup do they belong to, therefore you can help the oncologist direct to the right kind of treatment. So this is the journey that we're on, becoming a biotech company. And so we've built a number of capabilities to go there, and since 2 years ago, we've also had leading pharma companies in our cap table, Sanofi and BMS. And so we're able to develop also treatments, discover targets for their pipeline, and also optimize clinical trials that they're doing. So it's a bit of a parallel approach of becoming a biotech ourselves, as well as working with life science companies that have all the expertise and capabilities to take the drugs to the patients. So it starts with the patients, and it ends with the patients.
Thanks, Hubert. And also, I forgot to mention that if you have any question, do not hesitate, do not be shy. You can ask any question, and we will take them along the way. We have now Susanne Schorsch, you're an investor at Amadeus. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and about Amadeus? Because probably you have entrepreneurs in the room today. What's your investment thesis and what you're looking at?
Sure. Yeah, I hope there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the room today. And I hope you find the session information. We have a one-to-one later, right? So you can also ask questions then. So, but again, don't be shy. So Susanne, yeah, I'm not naturally like an investor. I would say I'm an engineer by training. I did some finance, then I was running, building, and restructuring businesses. And at some point in time, I discovered really my love for investing in cutting-edge technology, and it's a big luxury for me to do this as a job now every day. You know, maybe for Amadeus Capital Partners, I think Amadeus was investing in deep tech when the word deep tech didn't exist yet. Now it's a little bit of a buzzy word, but we are 25 years around, 6 early stage funds, and also investments in the areas of biotech and life sciences. So we're not a dedicated life science fund. I'm now here on the stage because we're just about to close our early growth fund for deep tech. But I would say many areas that you may work in, synthetic biology, AI-enabled diagnostics or therapies, also certain areas of life science tools. That's what we're eager to invest in, but they need to have a deep technology stack, so to say. I think the super, cool part of being an investor these days is that, the classic categories that we had 5 years ago don't apply anymore. But there's a lot of disciplines merging and cross-fertilization of disciplines coming obviously from the academic institutions, but also driven by what you said, patient need, but also need for cost efficiencies. So that's what we're typically looking at, and we would like to invest in companies that are pretty close to market fit. I know that's very challenging for you here in the room because, you're obviously not a SaaS enterprise and you're not a consumer app. You're really probably have already worked for at least 2, 5, 8 years before you're reaching that, but that's what we're looking for.
Thank you, Susanne. And maybe if they're not there yet, maybe in 1 or 2 years, they will remember this panel today and they will come back to you when they're close to the...
Yeah, and maybe I can give advice, right? You are always fundraising, so you're always looking for investors. And even if we're not at the stage yet where we would invest in you, it's always good to keep contact and to have also your investors on the radar. So it's not only that we're looking, for deal flow and have you on our radar, but you should also have us, the investors, on your radar. So I think this is a very important job you have to do as a founding team and CEOs.
Yeah, and that's a good advice indeed, probably because you have to deal with investor, you have to partner with investor all along your journey as an entrepreneur. And talking about also entrepreneurs and also working in an incubator, we have Emmanuel Vincent with us today. He's the CEO of Aenitis Technologies and also entrepreneur in residence at Agoranov. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you're doing on a daily basis?
Thank you. So yeah, I'm Emmanuel Vincent. I'm trained initially as a biologist, and then I've been to the dark side of the force because I became a manager. I've been through 2 management schools, and I did an executive MBA between France, Canada, and China. I work for Agoranov, which is, I think, one of the biggest deep tech incubator in France. I had the chance, since 12 years, I work with them now, to support and to coach lots of startups, around 50 to 55 startups, including Doctolib, DNScript, cardiologs, and people like that. What we developed there is, I would say, training to really start a deep tech startup. So we are very at the early stage, and it's very interesting. And as you said, I'm also CEO of a deep tech company, because it's good to train people, but it's good also to show that you're able to do things. So Aenitis Technology is a company that's using acoustic to handle cells. What we use is the acoustic radiation forces are able to push the cells, and the acoustic can go through channels or to tubing, so you don't touch the cells, so you work in sterile condition, in flow. And acoustic is a very low mechanical stress force, so it permits to handle cells with no damaging the cells. So here are my two hats, and I'll be very happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
And I understood also, Emmanuel, that you have roots from both sides of the Atlantic, from France and also from Canada. Can you tell us a little bit more what are the differences you see between those two geographies in terms of the healthcare journey, in terms of the entrepreneurs? Probably you have good insight on that.
Oh, first of all, I was lucky to work in Canada and to become Canadian, and also to be, of course, based in France. I was born in France. What is important is to understand the culture of the person you have in front of you, because you need to create confidence. If it's an investor, if it's an ex-employee, if it's your partners, even in the network with the key players and the big company, you need to create this confidence. And according to the culture you are not building the confidence in the same way. For example, in Europe, we are really engineer-based, and we focus more on the proof that the engineering is great. In North America, there is a kind of gut feeling too. You need to create confidence because you will become the biggest, the greatest, and you create a success, and they like to have those stories about success. Of course, Europeans like it too, but it's a slightly different approach. And to give you an example, if you think about cardiologues, it's interesting because cardiologues make it success in US, but it starts in France. And it was just acquired, I think, 12 months ago by Philips. So it's a success story up to the end. And cardiologues, to raise money in France, had to make its proof of concept. So cardiologues is using ECG, and to analyze ECG with EA to be able to tell to the cardiologues that there is something happening in this ECG, so maybe you can focus for this patient and so on. And it was interesting because the investors said, yeah, okay, your proof of concept should be very strong because we need to be confident in your, I would say, your algorithm. And they request around 30,000 ECG analyzed by the EI to prove that it was real. I don't know if in US they will have requests as much proof of concept, I would say. And this is how cardiologists manage to have enough money to then start. And then in US, of course, as long as you start a business and they saw that success was coming, then they finalized to have more and more money up to Philips acquire them. So it's an example of the differences.
Yeah, thank you, Emmanuel. And as you said, I mean, it's important to understand that in the healthcare entrepreneurship journey, I mean, it takes a lot of time. And for Owkin also, it takes a lot of time. And it has been, let's say, you wrote it from also the US and Europe, and as Emmanuel, probably you also have some insight. But can you tell us a little bit more about like the Owkin's journey? Like, did you find the right way to do it from day one, or does you have some roadblocks, some milestone, some things you have to basically like some that you have to break before you're going to the success that you have today, basically?
Thank you. Yeah, the introduction started saying Owkin was a unicorn. You talk about success, and it's great to hear that. But in my intro, I also said we're on the biotech journey, and it very much feels like the beginning of that journey. So, what I'll point to is it feels like we've earned to be at the beginning of this journey because we reached the end of a little bit of the startup journey in a way. So Owkin was started 7 years ago, and back then there really wasn't. There was a lot of discussion about what is the business model of AI, how is this going to really impact healthcare and clinical care, so on and so forth. And so yes, there was a lot of uncertainty, and probably nobody, even inside Owkin, really predicted we would be here today. So we became a unicorn at the end of 2021 with the investment of Sanofi, $180 million. But I think, Emmanuel, you said something interesting with the way to tell a story and a success story and proof points. I think there were two things that, looking back, really helped Owkin. The first one was recognizing that it all starts with the data. And we spent considerable efforts cultivating that network, whether that's KOL, academic centers. We worked very closely with PIs, with KOLs in those hospitals, and collaborating with them. And we did everything for free. We never sent an invoice to a hospital. We installed servers. We had data scientists collaborate very closely with the PIs, and that resulted in papers. And you'll say the finality of a company is not to publish papers, but that really is what put us on the map. Publishing in Nature, it's only because of this and those proof points that I think pharma companies started to take notice, and we got our first pharma contracts because they saw that we have something with the centers that's tangible that they couldn't replicate. And so that's what later on attracted Sanofi and BMS. So that's the first one. And I think the second thing you pointed that we're both a French and an American company, and from the start we had investors also from France and international. So First and BPI France in France, of course, but also Google Ventures, F Prime, and a few years ago, a Series A of $70 million was a little bit unheard of in the French ecosystem, and definitely there wasn't 30,000 patients or ECGs that we had as a proof point. So that gave us a lot of leeway to experiment, because to get where we are, we didn't know if we'd be an infrastructure software company or just a data science consulting shop, or indeed a biotech company. And so we had to experiment product market fit quite a bit. And so that took patience from the investors. But I think what helped is that we did a lot of experiments, but the common theme is that we were continuously building up our platform. And it's the same platform that we're using and leveraging today to become an AI biotech company.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, we understand then Owkin, even with the success, and you're still saying you're in the beginning of that journey, and that's true in a sense, even though you're a unicorn, and that resonates to me as well, because like in our incubator, I mean, the first startups that we supported was GenFit. It was incorporated in 1999, and we're now 24 years from now, and they're still making €0 as a turnover, and there's no product on the market. So, but still, it takes time, and it's some kind of a roller coaster journey, because you're up and down in that journey, and you still need to enjoy it all across the way. And if you don't enjoy it, it's probably make it more difficult. We heard about Owkin. What about Aenitis? I mean, since the start, what was the key learning? What was the key milestone that you faced, Emmanuel, with Aenitis? Can you share a little bit on that with your fellow entrepreneurs?
Okay, the first thing I would say is it's very, very important to have a kind of reverse psychology to your people you speak with. You really need to convince, and when you go from deep tech, it means that, for example, investors don't have automatically a model that look like you, so they know which egg they put in which basket. So this is something which is not easy, and you need to pre-digest for them their thinking, because if you do not, they will just take your dossier and take the next one. Because it's too complex, it's deep, it's early, it's risky. So you need to address this. So you really need to anticipate questions they may have. You need to focus on the indicator they need to be able to invest in you or not. Then you really need, because you're in deep tech, to use all the non-dilutive leverage. Since the last 6 years or 7 years, I managed to raise around 9 million euro just in grants. Why? Is because you work from a business plan, and this business plan needs to be reused and updated, and you can use part of this business plan to answer to the questionnaire of, I don't know, for ELC, health and stuff like that. It's really important to use those leverage, because if you manage to have some non-dilutive fund, then it's less hard to raise some, I would say, dilutive fund. And also it's useful because the dilutive fund thing, okay, it's a kind of label. You manage to have this grant, which is like 2% chance of having it. So maybe there's something behind it. So you unrisk again your business and the possibility to raise. And also on human resources. It's really important to be well surrounded with people you trust and people who trust in you. You need to be very active because you start in small team. So in a small team, if you have someone who look good, who've got a good profile, but a bad attitude, someone who's negative, for example, do not hesitate to say, no, stop, bye-bye. Because you cannot stay too long with people in a small team that are not going in the good direction. And this is something sometimes very hard, because we are still human, we like people, we don't want to fire people and stuff like that, but this is very important to be very active in this, because investors invest in the best team. You can have an average project with the best team, you will receive fund. You have the best project, but with an average fit team, maybe they will not invest, because they trust first on the team, not on the project. And this is something also very important. And maybe I have a lot of tricks, but I give you the speak.
Yeah, thank you, Emmanuel. So that we hear the tricks from the entrepreneurs. But what about the investors? When you're probably receiving like hundreds of texts every year, you're meeting with hundreds of entrepreneurs every year. But what makes you discriminate like a project when you will invest in or not? I mean, what we want to hear is like a little bit what's your secret sauce, how you choose, how you pick the right one. Can you give us some insights around that?
Yeah, I think there's two things. I think secret sauces only exist in Paris, so I think you have a history for that. No, I think this is I think a lot of, I would say, common sense paired with intuition. As an individual investor, I would say. I think obviously we have certain criteria that we are looking for, and I want to speak generally for many investors. I think when you are more early stage, of course, there's a lot of technological risk, and I think a lot of investors today look, especially in the healthcare sector, in really transformative technologies, where they in their portfolios can produce an outlier, so to say. As growth investors, where I'm at now, I would really look that you have something that has, a certain product market fit, or you are very close to that. That being said, I think I want to, mirror a little bit what the entrepreneur says, because I think it's not, oh, here's the founders and the entrepreneurs, and there's the investors, right? It's a team in the end. So that's why I also mentioned at the beginning, look at your investors, who you want to work with. It's not only a one-way street, it's a two-way street. And if you want to be effective and successful as a company, it takes the entire stakeholders, which is, obviously the management team, the founders, the employee team, it's the investors, it's the advisors that you work with, because in healthcare you often not only have a board where investors are part of, but there should be, really take it from me, there should be a lot of independent directors that help you in various aspects of your journey. But there's also scientific advisory boards often. So there's many, many teams within your company, and the further you go and the more you build your company, the more stakeholders are there. And I think it's really making sure that you all work towards the same goal, that you align objective. I think that's very crucial. And I think as an investor, this is also what I'm looking at. So I'm not only looking at the one founder, the brilliant guy, who's like super captivating and his stellar product, but I'm looking at the entire company. And if as an investor, I have the feeling that with this company, we can, take that journey together.
Yeah, as you said, I mean, it's partnership, the entrepreneur-investor journey, and it's very important that, I mean, it's like a marriage. I mean, you have to feel comfortable with one another. You have to build confidence. We were talking about confidence before. Otherwise, I mean, you know that you won't make it, and it will not be a success at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think one aspect, I think, what we still often observe in Europe, and I generalize now a little bit, that when you are coming from France, you know, you have in the beginning a lot of local investors. When you are in Switzerland or in Germany or in Denmark, you have a lot of local investors. You have local boards. I think you really have to break out of this. I think European-based startups really have to learn that early on you have to create kind of a international environment, because your playground will be the world, right? It's not only your home country. If you want to be impactful, both in terms of returns, but also in, you know, reaching patients or reaching certain markets, the world is your playground. So you have also to set up your team, your investor base, your boards, you know, to that. And that also includes, for example, you rightly mentioned, though, KOLs, key opinion leaders, both on the scientific side and in the clinics. So that's why I'm also looking at, I think I would never invest or shouldn't invest in a company that, you know, has just like local investors, a local board, has only done clinical trials locally. So that I would never do that. I think it's very hard to get from this position into like a global player, which we have the ambition to invest in.
Yeah, and it's a very good point, and it's, in my opinion, a little bit changing that in the recent years. So when I joined Eurasanté like 6 years ago, at seed level or even Series A, it was very, very rare. It was really the exception when you have like an international investors in the first or second round. Now, I mean, it's still not the majority, I mean, for sure, but it's becoming more and more. You see investors from all other countries in Europe, or even US investors popping in at a very early stage. And it's very important because, as you said, I mean, healthcare, it's still a global market, so you have to be global. But in a sense also, you have all the difficulties, especially in medtech and in digital health, that each country has its own regulations, and you have to deal with these own regulations. And if you don't have investors from that country, it's very difficult to access that market.
You can do a quick check, because I see some of you have the smartphone open. Go to your LinkedIn profile, look at your network, and look at the diversity of your network geographically and functionally, if you have time. Do it later.
Thank you. And you, Emmanuel, what about your like investor-entrepreneur relationship? What kind of advice would you give to
No, what was said is really important, because you don't need just money. If you have the possibility to have smart money, it's better, of course. And all is linked, because external, well, when I say external, no, investor from foreign country give you lots of tricks. First, on the culture of this country or this area. So if you have a US investor, they will explain you that in USA it's more to do like this or like this. It's also important to have investors who have good network and who know about the sector where you work in, because they will give you also the trick of how you need to react there. Basically, the best way to go everywhere is to be a kind of chameleon, to be able to work in any field and to path there. I will give you an anecdote, which is also important for investors, because they want to get in, but they want to get out. And the exit strategy is something you need to think quite early. And to create confidence, you need to have some proof that there is a way that you can go out. And one suggestion I will have is the CEO at Minima should go in many conferences on the specific field, like for myself in cell and gene therapy and blood banks conference. Why? It's because you go on the boots of all the big players and you explain your technology, and initially you start to meet some people which are not very important, but you explain, they challenge you, they think, oh, it's good, because everybody will say, oh, it's fun, it's good, it's deep tech. But the real anecdote is there. I've been to the AABB, which is the American Association of Blood Bank. Now they changed the name, but it's the same idea. And the 4th year I've been there, I've been on the boots of one really big player, we speak about 6 billion every year in the field. And I've been again and say, hey, how are you, blah, 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 and say, okay, it's the 4th year, now you need to meet the president. Say, what? And the president say, okay, we've heard about you, and I've never met any startup before the 4th year. Why? It's because if they do the 3 first year is good, but 4th years mean that they may do a success, so now we speak with you. And it was a totally change. It was not a very nice exchange. It was just, okay, what is your strategy? What do you want to do? Do you need us to help you? What you need? My vice president will give you some information. My sellers will give you some information. You want to try our machine? No problem. We give you one of our machine, you give it back then. So it was amazing. And this is something important. And why? Because the confidence was there. Because they saw me 4 times. So 4 times they think, okay, he got money, he's still developing things, and maybe it will continue. So this is one of the anecdotes, and of course the investor like this kind of anecdote, because when you send an email to this person and say, oh, I'm raising fund, but can you just do a kind of letter of interest on the product, on the future product, stuff like that, it's useful. And also if you want to raise money from grants and stuff like that, grants, if you think about reverse psychology, what they want you first to create jobs and to be one of the company that is the biggest in the world and blah, 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 blah. So do not have letter of interest from your own country. Take letter of interest from everywhere. And for some dossier I had, there's some letter of interest from main people from Europe, but also from US and from Asia. And then, of course, they think, okay, everybody think it's a possible great technology, so we should bet on this one, so you have the grant. So, well, it's a trick, but...
No, but you're right. It's building confidence, as you said, is a key element, and consistency also is a key point. We were talking about investors and VCs, but they have a kind of investors as well, and you have one at Owkin. It's probably like something that you have to do when you are in the healthcare, and when you are in healthcare startups, is that you have to deal with corporates that are much bigger than you are, and you are now working with Sanofi and partnering with Sanofi. And can you elaborate a little bit more on that partnership and how it's create values for both of you?
Sure. So we have 2 such strategic collaborations where the big pharma companies provide both capital and a commercial deal. And it's really just aligning the interest of what we're trying to develop and what the pharma companies are looking for, and they're looking to either feed their pipeline. So that's the example of the Sanofi deal is on drug discovery and target discovery, or to optimize how things are working through their pipeline. And so AI is also a powerful tool to increase the statistical power of clinical trials, and so be able to reduce the time and or cost of such clinical trials and improving the probability of success. And so the Sanofi one is in oncology, specifically for 4 indications within oncology, and BMS is on cardiovascular disease. But there are deals that take a lot longer, obviously, than traditional pharma contracts that are a bit more transactional, and which was the bread and butter of Owkin until 2021. But we continue to do such client engagements. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I see that the time is ticking, and I want to still take time to take your questions. Do not hesitate to ask questions also on the app directly. And we have one question for you, Susanne, from the audience about what are like the trends that you see in healthcare? Do you see more like a trend in biotech, in medtech, or in digital health? Like, what are the sectors that you see are the most promising for the years to come as an investor? Can you tell us a little bit more on that? It's a difficult question, and there are many implications behind that, I understand.
I think in healthcare, it's twofold, right? Because when are we speaking about a trend? Are we speaking about a trend when everyone else talks about it, or when does the trend originate? I think in a lot of cases, either the trend is like what I would call a technology push, so it originates from disruptive research done at our great research institutions in Europe and obviously also in other countries, that there's technologies I think, like yours, that will enable, you know, like new ways to deliver therapies or to discover therapies, for example. But I think then there is also clear indicators in the market, and I think COVID has taught us a very good lesson, right? That in order to make health systems more affordable and efficient, we have to find new ways how to care for patients and how to reach patients. So the whole topic of you know, remote monitoring, but also real-world evidence. So there's many facets, and I could talk for hours about that, which we can maybe do in the one-on-one later. But I would say be very aware that as investors, you know, we are investing here in technologies that have emerged and originated many years ago. So I think this is also, as an investor, that you have to, you know, have on your radar. And it's also, I think, for you important to know that it's a timing question often. You know, I think there's many good technologies, but then it's a question of timing when you come to the market. And sometimes you're a little bit early, sometimes a little bit late. And I think this is actually was a good point to also keep in touch with the markets, to keep in touch with players like pharmaceutical companies to see where the market is going.
Thank you. And we have another question for you, Susanne, around because I mean probably money is a key element to all entrepreneurs. Is how do you react to see like state or government entities in the cap table when you invest? Because we see more and more than trend that there are sovereign funds, TTOs that are in the cap table from the very early stage. Do you see that as an opportunity because everyone is on board, or do you see that as more complexity?
It depends who it is. It's the same question actually on the strategic investors, you know, so you can ask around that there's good investors and bad investors. And you know, the best way to find this out, if you speak to some companies that have been successful with their investors and you ask them, you know, how did this investor behave? How did he contribute and add value? So I think it's generally it's not a no-go. I mean, I think it's a development to jumpstart a lot of startups, and usually a lot of, you know, the institutions also here in France, like BPI and also in other countries, and there's obviously those, they are very professional investors already. I mean, they are professionalized. So I think this is definitely not a no-go. I think it's also important, like you mentioned, there's a lot of also non-dilutive grants available. And so this is, I think, also for you, especially in the early stage, you should really look for those, because that's you know, good non-dilutive grants is good because it gets you a long way without diluting yourself, and then there's a little bit more that you can share later on.
Oh, I definitely agree. Non-dilutive grants, that's really something that, I mean, there are plenty of non-dilutive grants out there, and when we support entrepreneurs in our incubator, that's the first thing that we do, is trying to get the best of this non-dilutive financing before you go to see investors, and that's also a key point. I see that we're running out of time. Can you tell us, like, maybe Emmanuel and Hubert, like in one word, like what might be like a quick advice to the fellow entrepreneurs in the room today? Maybe Emmanuel, if you want to start.
I would say that chance is possible to create, and it's not just by hazard. And to have chances, you need to be a kind of factor of opportunity. So the CEO and the management team must create the opportunity, and the opportunity need to be in any places, and they don't like circle things. So just think different, try to react. If you have a competitor that happen, it may be something good, you can do co-opetition, you can just react all the time. So be opportunistic and an opportunity for your own company. And this is a state of mind you should have, not to be too much engineer. And think also about the business. The exit strategy of the investor is an exit like an M&A, IPO, but also because you can do sales. So think about the sales, and it's not easy when you do deep tech. So this is the advice.
And Hubert, in one word.
Sure. I would say particularly for AI startups that today, if you're a brilliant data scientist, That's great, but it's not enough if it ever was, particularly because you have to think about how you integrate in the care workflow. And so surrounding yourself with the right, whether it's a scientific advisory board or co-founders that know well, they're not engineers, but surround yourself with doctors. That's one example. And then a second one, really quickly, I think it's important. You're going to experiment a lot, but you cannot go into an experiment without having clear definition before you go into it about what's going to be success or not. It's very easy to just keep on going and what if we do this, if we do that, but it's going to be much more efficient if you know from the start the criteria that you give yourself for I'm going to keep doing it or not at the end of that experimentation.
Thank you, Hubert, and that will be the end of our panel for today. If you have any more questions to our speaker, do not hesitate to meet us at the Meet the Speaker area. And again, thank you to all, and enjoy the Hello Tomorrow Global Summit today and tomorrow. Thank you.